color the tenor of my conversation today, and I'll explain why in a moment. But first, I'd like to, first, everyone knows you're supposed to go to lab after this. Some of you clearly didn't know you're supposed to come here, so if your lab leaders didn't tell you that, they probably might not have told you that you're supposed to go back after this is over. So I wanted to start with this reading of a piece of beat poetry by William S. Burroughs, who's considered to be one of the most politically trenchant, culturally influential, and innovative artists of the 20th century. And this is his commentary, this piece of prose on the space age. Tell me if you can.
Well, first I'd like to express my appreciation for the artists and producers and helpers who have made this event possible. And people have asked me what the cold nose convention is about. And this is what it's about in very few words. This is the space age, and we are here to go. However, the space program has been restricted so far to a mediocre elite who at great expense have gone to the moon and Aquilon. Now, they're not really looking for space, they're looking for more time. Like the lungfish and walking catfish, they weren't really looking for new dimensions different from water, they're looking for more water. But some of them found they had taken an irretrievable forward step, and for better or for worse, left their gills to their makers. And as we leave the aqualung of time, we may step into an epoch comparable to the days when the early mariners set out to explore an unknown world. I can see all manner of spacecraft, some of them obviously lethal, preparing to take off. Only those who are willing to leave everything they've ever known in time need apply. It is necessary to travel, it is not necessary, and becoming increasingly difficult to live.
Things that were interesting there, he concludes on this quotation that it is necessary to travel, but it's not necessary, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to live. It's really profound. Let's take a look at it. So, let's start off.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah?
There's nothing projecting it.
I know.
Okay.
I don't have a fancy Prezi or anything. I tried to do it, and it took me more time to figure out than it did actually post things onto it. I can just turn on my notes if that will help you all. Okay. See? Good Johnny! Okay, so being from the critique lab, when I first read the topic and started thinking about the topic, one of the things that occurred to me is that when you're dealing with a topic of this magnitude and scale, that some of the most fundamental human values come into perspective. And one of the things I spent the most amount of my time looking for was reasons that the human race needs to be perpetrated, needs to be extended, and what it's going to mean when we have billions and billions of light years, billions and billions of years of development, and humans are a very minuscule part of that. What is our relationship to the fact that the universe goes on and on? And this has puzzled philosophers for generations and centuries and millennia. And Blaise Pascal, you all know about Pascal's triangle and other things that he's done, has this really famous quote that I really like: "The eternal silence of infinite space terrifies me." And some of you may have not met my girlfriend Julie. She's been taking, for the girls, she's been taking your role on the floors and everything. And she doesn't like to talk about space because it's weird when you think about asteroids and things like that. So it's space values that we're looking at, the human species as a whole, and what our place in the universe is, and ultimately human meaning, and what our purpose should be. This is also the principle of a lot of science fiction. I think there are kind of three main categories of science fiction. There's superhuman science fiction. There's four categories, sorry. There's the historical science fiction sort of thing that's like Lord of the Rings, elves and stuff like that, and magic. There's robots and artificial intelligence and things like that. And space is another category. This is why I'm directing our lab to research a science fiction affirmative about the exploration of space, how positing aliens can help us work out discursively, performatively, and ethically some of the things that we do here on Earth. A lot of people say that aliens are a projection of our imaginary, and it's no coincidence that the term alien applies both to space invaders and to immigrant invaders trying to cross the border. And so what space does is it provides an opportunity for reflection on the human condition. Aliens are but a symptom of that, and so too is the notion of space colonization. The question becomes, why would we colonize, and is it a kind of try or die situation in which we have to get off the rock, is what it's called, or is there a different value that we're trying to get? It's also interesting to me that there's now a Google Moon program and a Google Mars program, and there's even a new version of RISC. It's called 2210, in which you can conquer the moon and mine the moon for resources to build up your armies, which is both funny and terrifying at the same time. But the amount of literature on the question of how we get beyond the Earth into the solar system is one that has so much literature now and so much science fiction fantasy about it that it's something that you may not even realize how comfortable you are with the notion like, oh yeah, aliens. It's not surprising anymore in the movies that come out. And a recent article that I've been reading for the colonization affirmative contends that the Copernican revolution, where we began to see ourselves not as as the center of the universe, has yet to be complete. That instead of just thinking of ourselves as not the center of the universe, we have failed to establish ourselves as inhabiting a solar system. That the solar system is our natural environment and one of the logical conclusions of human growth, not the Earth. And as soon as we begin to see it in those terms, we can understand how we should necessarily move into the Moon, into Mars, eventually Venus, and that should be our base of operation. We're conceptualizing the environment around us in those terms, as a solar system, not as a planetary species. So I think that, in general, when we talk about the topic, there are two primary problems. And I think you're well aware of these. The first is chance. I have an astrophysicist friend. I go to Johns Hopkins. I'm working on my PhD. And it's Johns Hopkins that has remote control of the satellite telescope Hubble. Now, I think you know that Hubble is not just a telescope that we have on Earth. It's a satellite we put up into space. And it's a gigantic telescope in space. And what it enables us to do is, it's not clouded by the Earth's atmosphere, like the carbon dioxide and the ozone layer, the cloud covering, all of those things that are in our atmosphere. Once we put a telescope out into space, it can see thousands and thousands and thousands of times further than telescopes here on Earth can see. And so when I was talking to some of my astrophysicist friends, this one in particular said there's new satellites that are going up, but the reason we should explore space is to learn new things, right? To experience new discoveries. So for example, Hubble enabled the discovery that half of all stars in the planet, or half of all stars in the universe have planets that are orbiting them, which means that the likelihood of extraterrestrial life just multiplied by a significant degree once we made that discovery. It was only through the use of Hubble that was able to be discovered. But in debate, that's not going to get you a lot of mileage, because you can't quantify things you don't know exist yet, right? You can't say we're going to discover new cures to diseases, but in debate, like, you can't impact that because you don't know which disease. You can't say cancer, you can't say AIDS, because it might happen. Right? Similarly, new discoveries in planets and things are so speculative you can't get advantages off of them. So while the astrophysicist community is really concerned about getting new telescopes up, new space telescopes like the second Hubble, which is coming out, and those are the real aspirations, like the on-the-ground real concerns of the space scientific community, that's not the kind of thing that's going to win you debates. The other thing is the fact that the time frame is so friggin' long. Right? It's going to take 200, 300, 400 years to transform Mars into a habitable planet. And by that time, all of their impacts will easily have come through. So it's really easy to win a disadvantage or a criticism will turn the case before their impacts are likely to happen. And so for that reason, a lot of the literature that people are actually talking about, and the holistic literature, like in order to survive as a species, we're going to have to get to Mars, or get off the rock, that none of that actually accounts for the debate lingo. And so, and the way that debates actually go down. You'll find yourself losing debates if you put all your eggs into the space exploration for the sake of exploration, or that we need to get into Mars. If you stay in those kind of arguments, if you put all your eggs in those baskets, you're going to start losing debates. Here's an example of a card that I found that is pretty good to answer the space colonization thing. Economic collapse would presumably at least interrupt efforts towards establishing a space colony. Economic crises may also increase the risk of war, which would have apocalyptic consequences. Even assuming the ultimate solution of human survival is space colonization, we may need to find a way to extend the lifespan of human civilization and economy on Earth in order to have time to accomplish sustainable space colonization. Right? Very, very clearly. I mean, it's an easy thing to say, but the cards are out there that if the economy collapses, it would turn the case. And there's literally cards that say our entire space colonization program would be train wrecked if we were to let the economy stagnate. Yeah. What's up?
What's the author of that card?
This is Hard Science Fiction, Hard SF, 2007. It's going to be turned out in our file. Every card that I'm going to read to you is going to be turned out in our files. But I think, who's allowed to say spending? Nobody's allowed to say spending. I know that there's a spending problem. Alright, well, I'll just let that one sit out there. Okay, so the topic of this lecture then is human exploration of the moon and of Mars. So this breaks down into three subtopics: why human exploration, and then why the moon, and then why Mars. And our lab is focusing on Mars, so that's what I have most to speak about. But one of the central questions that's entailed in our discovery, or in our research concerning Mars, is why we need to send humans there. It's the manned mission to Mars, the one-way mission to Mars, those sorts of things. And again, I'm going to say at the outset, I reject the gendered implication of the vocabulary in the literature of man versus unmanned. I would say person versus in-person, but that's a debate for a different day. So the literature uses this term. So unmanned missions are substantially less expensive. Obviously, you don't have to have oxygen. You don't have to have the safety features. You don't have to have seatbelts. They're more efficient for that same reason. They can go for longer durations. They're easier with respect to our current technology, and they're less politically risky. And the political risk question is one that emerged from the emphasis of the United States in its competition with the Soviet Union to win the space race. Because they put the first Sputnik up into space, we had to beat them by putting the first human up into space, and the first human on the moon and getting the American flag. And that was conceived of as what it took to win the space race. The unfortunate reality is, though, that there were a series of mishaps. When we first started firing rockets up into space, we would put dogs and monkeys on them, and they met some very tragic fates along the way. And so too did several humans. Not only in the design phase back on Earth when we were working with a new rocket fuel or something, humans would die, but they became significant national tragedies when Columbia and then the Challenger exploded. It really eroded public support for the space program, which I don't think makes very much sense to me. I mean, a lot of people don't even know that we're doing military operations in Libya, or something like that. But as soon as 15 astronauts die, it's a huge national tragedy. One second. And so, the fact that we're so invested in human spaceflight means that the symbolic value of going to space is really tainted with a history of deaths and national tragedies like September 11th. It was the national imaginary. Your family would gather and watch the space shuttles lift off, and then they would watch them land, and everyone would cheer for the astronauts. And when it exploded on live television, everyone was just so shocked, and public support for the space program almost evaporated overnight. You got a question?
Well, I got like.
Huh?
I think we should find a way to get you to Mars faster because if you want to get to Mars, it takes like 7 months, and you want to come back.
6 months, yeah.
Yeah, it would take about a year program.
Okay, so we should have a fast way to get to Mars. All right, so regarding human exploration, the same thing, that greatest drawback of human exploration can also be its greatest strength. When everyone was gathering to cheer on the astronauts, it was something that people could put a lot of their faith into. Putting the man on the moon, and you saw the spacewalk and all those sorts of things, really reinvigorated the public imaginary. You had a lot of little kids that were in high school or elementary school or whatever that said, I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. In fact, one of my friends has an astronaut fetish. She was engaged for 3 years, and at the first opportunity to start dating the son of an astronaut, she abandoned her fiancé and started dating this astronaut's son. And she even has a Star Wars or Star Trek Jean-Luc Picard fetish and thinks that all bald men are attractive for some kind of like weird reason that Star Trek was awesome. She was a Trekkie. So being able to envision yourself in the shoes of an